Good afternoon. This is Rob Rotman for Adapt Chicago Productions. My guest today is Susan Aarup, activist, playwright. Susan, welcome back to Adapt Chicago Productions.
Thank you so much, Rob. I'm happy to be here today.
Great, thank you. I think if I'm right, I don't want to give you away your exact age, but I think you are a baby of the 70s, right?
Yeah,
a
little bit before.
Oh, before, okay. But how do you feel, what got you, you were born obviously after the the beginning of the civil rights movement. How did you get interested? What got you interested in doing civil rights trips?
My, I guess it was always ingrained in me because I always knew I was a little bit different because of my disability. And I found out that the civil rights movement in the 70s, even when I was a kid, I wanted to make a difference.
And where did you grow up?
In the south suburbs.
Okay.
And my parents, but I went to school in Joliet. And we had, that was back in the 70s, where there wasn't as much segregation.
Yeah.
But still noticing a difference between how the African American students and Black community was still being treated differently than if you were white. So even in the 70s, it was a...
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. You went with your church on a civil rights trip. What role did the church play in the civil rights movement?
Well, they were key because Martin Luther King Jr. was a Baptist minister. So he was part of this whole thing of trying to make a difference and organizing. And then for slaves, that was the way that they could communicate.
Okay.
They would do pictures of fish in that community. Then they would be able to meet in secret. And then if the masters or slave owners found out about it, they would be whipped and chained and everything.
Explain, okay, I mean, the slaves that came over And I mean, obviously, were there slaves that were disabled?
I I don't know. There's
Right.
I didn't see any record of that
Right.
but I know that coming over, some of them had disabilities. And when then the minute they weren't able to be profitable
Wow.
and do the work, then they just killed them.
Yeah. Wow. And I want to ask you. I know I've heard the term liberation theology, and how does that work with Dr. King?
Liberation theology is like equal across the board.
Okay.
There's no, but he knew that to be liberated
Right.
and free was going to take work because, and the civil rights movement required action. So, and he knew, he even says in his I Have a Dream speech, I may not get to the top with you,
Right.
but I'm there. And he knew that the struggle would continue. But he started, and the liberation theology actually started for Dr. King when he was in prison in Alabama for doing the Birmingham jail.
Right. I know, that Dr. King did a lot of nonviolence work. One thing, are you aware that when he was a young divinity student, was that at Boston University?
I believe so.
I mean, I know that when he was a young divinity student and he went to India to study Gandhi's techniques, there was a woman named Libby Holman who was a very successful tobacco heiress, and she gave him the money to go to India to study. So in terms of King becoming interested in nonviolence, how did he really become?
Because he probably he didn't really believe in any violence. And he thought that we could make a purpose. That's not what was gonna get
Right.
anything done. He hated the violence. But he knew that he had to have something different
Right.
and organized to get Rosa Parks.
And who was Rosa Parks for people?
Rosa Parks is the mother of the civil rights struggle and civil rights. And she couldn't. She's the one who wouldn't give up her seat
Wow.
in the bus.
So she really was the one. Was she the one that inspired him, or did they both work together?
They both worked together because Martin Luther King, actually, Jr., actually worked in a newspaper office. So he had the first newspaper. And there were people who knew what was happening. And then they also knew that there would be a backlash. So you had whole people, taxis who would take the people to work because of the bus boycott. Because the whole community decided to do not go on the bus. And so they had to have allies to help the community get back and forth to work.
So, what I know that you traveled. Where did you go in terms of seeing the places of the civil rights movement, and what places really had an impact on you?
Alabama. We went to Selma,
Oh wow!
and here is the band. It's this National Historic Trail for the March to Montgomery over the Edmund Pettus Bridge.
Wow!
And they have these bands. You can take as many as you want.
Wow!
Do you want to know what makes Chicago great at 8? Team Chicago Challenge. For more than 37 years, Team Chicago Challenge gives you very cool information about all things motorcycles that you've been very hard-pressed to find anywhere else. So tune in to CAN TV Channel 19 this week and every week at 9:00 p.m. for Team Chicago Challenge for more amazing, unique, and homegrown Chicago programs.
And when did you make all these travels then?
In June,
Oh, June. Wow.
the first week of June.
Okay. Wow.
We did it for 5 days,
Oh wow.
and then we had devotions at night, and we would talk about our experiences. And for me, there was so much solidarity, understanding the struggle, and we fought for our disability rights for so long.
Right.
And now, and it goes back to, you've heard about the Underground Railroad, where people would have the slaves go to freedom, and there would be spots along the way. Well, when we passed the ADA, we were fighting for our civil rights, and we're still fighting for our community rights, folks with disabilities. So there is such a thing as the Underground Railroad for people with disabilities as well, because they have to go, right now, they have to go from state to state because to get services. So it's very similar. And the slaves were fighting for their freedom, and people with disabilities also fighting for disability rights, our civil rights, and ADAPT, National ADAPT, is on the civil rights video in the museum.
Okay. And the museum is where?
In Montgomery, Alabama. And, you know, there was a big slideshow, and it had members of National Adapt. And then on the video, and then in the background, it'll say disability rights are human rights, and all part of this video display, and then you can put, and it's called The Legacy Continues, because the march goes on,
Yeah.
and it doesn't stop.
Right. And how, because I was going to ask you, what was the campaign for voting rights? Explain that.
Voting rights. Slaves didn't have a vote, and black people didn't have a vote either. So, and they would, that's the voting rights that didn't happen until 65.
Right.
And it didn't happen until after Bloody Sunday, which was when they went from Montgomery to Selma on the bridge. And I actually got to talk to a gentleman who was 95.
Oh.
He talks on the bridge every day.
Oh my.
That's his job.
Oh.
And he tells what it was like, because you would think going across the bridge was no problem.
Right.
It was what happened after the bridge. That's when they beat people up and killed people. And
Yeah. And I was thinking, in terms of, were there any, in terms of the civil rights movement, people with disabilities directly involved in the civil rights movement?
no,
Okay. I was thinking,
not that I know of,
right.
because they kept saying, our time hasn't come yet.
Okay, yeah.
They would say that in the civil rights.
Yeah.
And for me, that was really powerful,
Yeah.
because as a person with a disability, our time hasn't come yet
Right.
either.
Right.
And the struggle continues.
Yeah. What is the difference, do you think, between the disability movement and the civil rights movement?
They're very similar. There's a lot of solidarity. But the difference is that the civil rights movement got noticed sooner. And people with disabilities, I just think it's harder.
We've had to struggle, yeah. I will say this, this is the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. What have you heard about that?
That they were still doing that, and that it was being talked about in Alabama.
Right.
They were scheduling for, I forget what day it is, but that was definitely talked about in Alabama.
Yeah. I'm wondering in terms of people that were there, it's the creative person in both of us. If you're aware, Ruby Dee, the great activist, actress, she had a stutter growing up, and I think she and her husband, Ossie Davis, may they both rest in peace and rest in power. She had a stutter, but she went on to be, this incredible actress.
Yeah, and I think what was powerful for me, I love who I am, and I love to explain things to people. But I still think that, the civil rights movement happened as much for the folks who were there as the people who will come after them. And I think that's very similar to what our rights are. Sometimes we don't see the impact we make.
Right, explain, yeah. And interesting, when did you hear about the Ku Klux Klan?
In grade school.
Yeah.
And then our class had to watch Mississippi burning
Okay, yeah.
because of the
Right, yeah.
civil.
Right,
I mean, people, earlier were asking about the Voting Rights Act.
right,
They didn't even get the right to vote. But then some of the African Americans,
right,
if you were black and you didn't even make it to the polls
yeah,
because
yeah,
they would
yeah. And there's some
kill
evidence,
you.
right? Do you like the movie Mississippi Burning? I mean,
I thought when I saw it with my high school, and we didn't have any. There was no racial thing.
okay, yeah,
I mean, we didn't.
right,
It was an all-white community.
yeah,
Now it's not,
yeah,
but it was
yeah,
when I was growing up. And I can remember my mom, my mom didn't understand it at all. She thought it was terrible. But I'm like, this is how it was for them. So, and I think that's what we always fight for, is the right to be heard, and that, and so we make a difference.
right. What kind of work are you doing now, or what?
I'm doing a lot of advocacy, trying to get disability rights, our civil rights.
Right.
So, trying to pass legislation and to make sure that we can get everyone can live where they want to live, and that people get the services they need. And then recently I've worked with the ARC and doing some case management with them.
I know you did a piece years ago when we worked for Jackie. If you can just real quickly talk about that piece you did about disability pride and the young man you saw.
Disability pride. It was about this. I did a piece on the parade, and which had been going on since 2004. And then I was this 6-year-old boy was part of the adapt action that we did. And he was talking to Congress. And then so much power. I was so touched by him. And disability pride, and he he had so much power. And then when he spoke in front of Congress. So, and then they did their own disability parade, pride parade. But that was really important to me. And I just talked about how sometimes we don't want to have a disability.
Right.
We don't like having to deal
Yeah.
with it. And that was okay, but it's still part of us. And for me, he had such power because it didn't matter.
Right.
He still did what he did.
Right. Yeah, and that was the same summer, if you remember, my dear friend Glenda Gill I talked about, who is from Alabama, a very fine African-American woman who I knew through theater. And she once said to me, Rob, you and I get along because we have had so many doors shut in our face that we have to stick together.
It makes a difference. There is power in numbers. There is power in what we do. But sometimes you've heard the old saying, misery loves company. Well, that is true. And that's why the slaves were they banded together at night because that was how they could cope. And that's how we cope too.
Right. It's sticking together, yeah.
Yeah, it's because nobody understands it the same way we do. And I'm not saying that every situation is the same.
Yeah.
It's not. But I think we can learn from each other.
Right. Okay, thank you so much, Susan. Thank you. It was great having you. Hope to have you on again.
Oh, thank you, Rob. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you. This is Rob Robin, Adapt Chicago Productions. Thank you.